Small, it was built to be quick. Super-Earth wanted a new way for its finest soldiers to cross vast distances in an instant. The Helldivers, champions of managed democracy, were chosen for this honor. They were brave. They were disciplined. They trusted their advanced technology without question. But the test failed in a way no one could have possibly predicted. It did not just fail, it ripped a hole in reality itself. The experimental FTL drive overloaded with a silent, blinding flash. One moment the sky was a familiar, comforting blue. The next, a swirling maelstrom of angry, bleeding red. Alarms shrieked, pure mechanical terror. The transport ship shuddered like a dying beast. Men and women, the elite, were thrown from their feet. They fell through a tunnel of screaming colors and fractured time. They tumbled out of the void into a world ancient and rotten to its core. The stars were wrong. The air smelled of burnt iron, old blood, fervent, desperate prayer. The Helldivers awoke on a ruined Gothic world. Massive stone towers reached for an overcast sky. Gargantuan statues of an enthroned man loomed over smog-choked cities. The soldiers of Super-Earth lived by a strict code of conduct. One paramount rule: the spread and defense of managed democracy. They had not just traveled across space, they had fallen into the 41st millennium. Endless war and fading light. Imperium patrols found the Helldivers before the sun had set on their first day. They were not simple soldiers. They were giants in ceramite armor, their movements heavy and deliberate. They carried weapons that looked more like instruments of faith than tools of war. They were flanked by robed priests, their faces grim masks of zealous certainty. The armored men, soldiers of the Astra Militarum, asked questions that made no sense. They spoke of tithes, psychers, fealty to the master of mankind. The Helldivers, trained to be ambassadors of freedom, answered with pride and a firm belief in their own system. The Imperium did not like outsiders. It did not tolerate strange ideologies within its heavily fortified sphere of influence. The concept of managed democracy sounded like sedition. The priests listened to talk of votes and councils, and their faces hardened. They pointed accusing fingers. They used a word the Helldivers had only read in history books: heretic. The soldiers of Super-Earth called themselves liberators. The agents of the Imperium called them a threat. Words failed to bridge the chasm between them. Guns, as they so often do, did not. The initial firefight was a brutal, confusing affair. The Helldivers were fast and used coordinated squad tactics. They were accustomed to fighting giant bugs and socialist robots, not the sheer grinding resilience of the Imperium's soldiers. Bolter rounds chewed craters. Lasgun volleys came in disciplined waves. At first, the Helldivers were losing ground. But the Helldivers had one thing that changed the entire equation. They possessed a weapon that the local forces could not comprehend. It was a tool of such overwhelming power that it bordered on the divine, yet it was born of science, not faith. From their damaged but still functional ship in high orbit, they could call down stratagems. They could deliver precise, devastating orbital strikes, wielded with the surgical precision of a master duelist. They did not level cities. They removed threats with terrifying efficiency. This world was plagued by more than the iron fist of the Imperium. A shadow lay over many lands. This shadow was called chaos. Men and women, driven to despair, worshiped dark gods for fleeting power. They burned towns, warped flesh, summoned gibbering monsters. The Helldivers identified clear and present danger. Pillars of white-hot light erased cult leaders and shrines without touching the hab block next to them. The Imperium watched with horror and disbelief. At first they condemned it as heresy. But then they saw the results. Whole populations saved from slow, cruel deaths. A grudging respect began to grow. Outsiders destroying the enemies of the God Emperor, effective if unwelcome. The word heretic faded. In its place, ally. Well, this newfound respect did not translate to friendship. The battle smoke cleared, but the ideological war raged on. The Helldivers carried their banner of managed democracy like a sacred torch. They spoke to the downtrodden citizens of the Imperium. They spoke of laws that gave men a choice in their governance, of rights, of representation, of a future not dictated by a distant, silent ruler on a golden throne. They offered a vision of hope utterly alien to the people. The Imperium spoke of duty and worship. The God Emperor, the one beacon of hope in a hostile galaxy. They preached that freedom was a weakness, a door for chaos. Where Helldivers saw prosperity, the Imperium saw seeds of anarchy. Where Imperium saw holy obedience, the Helldivers saw cruelty and ritual. The words clashed with the force of artillery shells. Small skirmishes and tense standoffs became common again. Soldiers who shared rations while watching orbital strikes now aimed weapons over barricades. The Helldivers helped towns form councils, vote on resources and defense, showed a different way. The Imperium could not tolerate this. Agents dismantled councils with cold silence and armored boots. The populace was torn, but the Helldivers had a code. Never abandon innocence to demons, or to the Imperium's fist. They keep their promises. Then the sky itself began to scream. It was not the sound of machines or men. It clawed at every living mind. The sky filled with teeth. The Tyranids came. They consumed worlds, a biological tide of single-minded hunger, descending like black, blighting rain. They matched every gun with claws, every explosion with more bodies. They were endless. Cities of faith and cities flirting with democracy were consumed by chittering, screeching, the wet tearing of flesh. From orbit, a cold truth settled. No single army could stop this alone. Helldiver leaders, Imperial officers, a grim-faced commissar. Days before, they tried to kill each other. Now they shared recycled paste and pored over maps like brothers in arms. The Helldivers would spot and mark synaptic leaders. The Imperial guns would be hammer and anvil. Space lanes cleared for a decisive stratagem. Together they moved like a single complex machine, learning with brutal speed. Guardsmen held with bayonets and faith. Helldivers dropped, planted beacons, called vaporizing strikes. Precision and attrition fit perfectly. A Helldiver and an Imperial guardsman stood back to back against the tide. The battle was apocalyptically brutal and mercifully fast. The Helldivers rained fire, orbital lasers, cluster bombs, turning swaths into glassy craters and burning sludge. The Imperial forces fought like a living wall, faith and last volleys a deadly curtain. Where one strategy failed, the other held the line. In the end, the synaptic web broke. Great beasts fell, the swarm scattered. The land lay quiet, blanketed in alien bones. After the victory, both sides counted the terrible cost. The cities were husks. Survivors looked to the Helldivers with gratitude, to the Imperium with renewed fear and faith. With the common enemy gone, the old argument returned, heavier than before. The Helldivers proved tech and ideals could save lives. The Imperium proved rigid order could hold back the dark. Neither trusted the other's future, but the bond of battle remained. The Helldivers stood at a crossroads. The Imperial general offered two paths: join the Imperium, protection, resources, honors, repairs, resupply, but bow, swear divinity, abandon managed democracy, or leave, carry their bright idea across a galaxy of fear, teach councils and votes, be hunted across the stars. There was no third option. With the God Emperor, or against him, the choice would define their future, and the future of all they had fought for.